And we've got some big news coming out of the Delphi Murders case as suspect Richard Allen gets approval to be transferred out of the maximum security prison. So we're going to take a look at what's behind that ruling and everything else that came out of that three-day hearing that our cameras weren't allowed in. More now from Scripps Indianapolis reporter Caitlin Kendall.
The Carroll County Sheriff won't tell us where Richard Allen is being housed, but he's now in the sheriff's custody instead of Wabash Valley Correctional Facility. This comes after Judge Fran Gold granted his attorney's motion to vacate the safekeeping order in full. This means that Allen does not have to stay in solitary confinement, though the sheriff did say it will now depend on Allen's behavior moving forward. When that motion came down, Allen was seen smiling and being embraced by his attorneys. This came after nearly 12 hours of testimony, a very long day in court where we heard from 9 total witnesses in regard to the state's motion of limine, which essentially means the state wants the court to limit what the defense can say to the jury. We heard from a blood splatter expert who described in detail how the blood found was at the crime scene. These details made family of both Abby Williams and Libby German visually upset. Aside from the safekeeping order, all other motions that have been heard over these past 3 days are being taken under advisement by the judge, and she will issue a decision as soon as she is able. Richard Allen's jury trial is set for October. In Delphi, Caitlin Kendall, WRTV.
All right, now let's talk more about what came out of that hearing that our cameras were not allowed into. I want to welcome in Court TV's senior producer of our documentary unit, Barbara McDonald, somebody who's followed the Delphi case since its inception. You are without a doubt our resident expert. So let's begin here. What was the juiciest thing? I mean, I know a lot came out of this, but the juiciest thing we learned over these last 3 days?
I think there's a lot of attention on the confessions. We learned more about these confessions. Initially, we had been told that there were several admissions made to his family. Now we find out there are more than 60 that were made during a 2-month period of time, that he made these admissions to multiple people, to guards, to other inmates who were guarding him on suicide watch, as well as to his family, and that some of those confessions, at least, contained information only the killer would know, according to the state. And he made these confessions not only verbally to these people, but also in writing. Now, we haven't seen exactly what he said. We haven't seen or heard his words, and we look forward to that at trial if this information's allowed in. But also keep in mind that these confessions came during a 2-month window when he was in maximum security prison at the Wabash Correctional Facility, allegedly the harshest conditions that he faced during his incarceration there. And he was behaving bizarrely. He was eating his own waste.
Right.
He was smearing it on himself.
His jail papers too,
yes,
right?
and he was running from one end of his cell to the other to bang his head into the wall. And he was being medicated involuntarily for psychosis at the exact same time, and that some of these confessions contained information that wasn't true. Like in one of them, allegedly, he said that he molested both girls and then shot them. They were not molested and they were not shot, according to the investigation and the autopsy reports and all of that. So the defense doesn't want all of these in. Sure. Even the prosecution wants to limit some of these. So we don't know how much of this information is actually going to make it in front of the jury. Something else that came out during this is that the psychologist who was treating him at that facility during this 2-month window, when he's being psychotic and making these admissions, joined some of the Facebook groups online at the time and was perhaps participating in discussions about him and his mental health. And so there's a lot there with these confessions that we don't know yet how many of these will make it into the trial and whether or not this psychologist who was treating him could be impeached with some of this other information that's coming out about her.
Oh my gosh, Barbara, that is incredibly unprofessional, as you know. It's stunning, actually. It's really stunning.
It's a violation of HIPAA and a whole bunch of other things. And then not to mention, this has already been a case that has been so difficult to prosecute. It took almost 6 years for us to even make this arrest. And then to perhaps in some way cause a problem by behaving that way.
This is terrible. I know there were several other things, but let's hit the biggies. In terms of other big things that came out of it, I understand the prosecution has wanted certain words kept out of the trial. Where are we with that?
The judge has not ruled on that yet, but yes, they are saying that we want certain words like Odinism, the names of the men that the defense has identified in filings as being these potential Odinist suspects. Their names they don't want mentioned. Kegan Kline, who was the guy behind the catfish account that they were looking at before they arrested Richard Allen, and Ron Logan, who was one of the first people they looked at because he was the property owner where the bodies were found, and he lied about where he was and got other people to lie on his behalf about all of that. And so they don't want any of this to come in. And what they're saying to the defense is, if you can prove that it was somebody else, then come to this hearing and prove that. And if you can't prove that, you shouldn't be able to talk about them at the trial. So we don't know what the judge is going to decide on any of that.
Right. So basically there's no concession from the state that, oh, we think we got the wrong guy, right? They are adamant.
No, they're saying, and even though when he was arrested, they said there could be other people arrested for this crime. Now, apparently in this hearing, they said, no, it's one person. It's him, and we're putting all our cards on the table for him. It's not anybody else. They say that these other Odinists, that they were able to not prove that they could have been in Delphi during the critical time period. We know that Richard Allen admitted to law enforcement that he was on the trails that day around the time the girls were there. So that's a problem. There was also some new information that came out that apparently in one of his confessions, he said that he used a box cutter to commit the crimes. They were killed with a knife of some sort. And he said it was his CVS issued box cutter, which apparently CVS issues these sort of disposable box cutters to people, and that's what he used. We don't have any information that says that was the murder weapon. We don't have any information that they found the box cutter and were able to tie that to him. So perhaps that will come out at trial. But another big thing that came out was talking about the sort of ritualistic nature of this crime scene, right? There was a woman who came in and testified that, yes, this fit all the criteria for a ritualistic crime scene. But one of the detectives who went out to investigate the blood at the scene, and specifically the blood that was on the tree, the defense has alleged that that was a Nordic rune, a letter F, that fits in with this whole Odinism theory and this ritualistic killing. This detective testified that he was able to, using his own blood that he had one of the lab people draw, that he was able to take a person who was 5'4", the same height as Libby German, and put the blood on her hand and put that up against the tree, almost leaning, like to prevent yourself from falling perhaps, and that's what, in his estimation, is the source of that.
Chills. I have chills.
Yeah, you know, apparently it was a very difficult day for the families to be sitting there and listening to some of this testimony. Most of the hearings we have not gotten this graphic with the information. It's a precursor to the trial, though. It's going to be a very, very difficult process for them. It also was a very long day. This was 3 days of hearings. Yesterday, they didn't end until 8:30 last night. They started at 9 in the morning. So it was a very, very long, very, very difficult day listening to some very disturbing testimony and trying to figure out, you know, where we are on this case. But the judge, the only motion that she ruled on so far out of this 3-day hearing was this motion to vacate his safekeeping. He is now out of that maximum security prison, won't be going back through the duration of this. Obviously, if he's convicted, he'll go back to a facility like that. But for now, he's going to be held in a county jail. That'll give his family better access to him. That'll give his lawyers better access to them, and that's something they've been fighting for, saying it interferes with their ability to defend him because they can't see him while he's in this maximum security prison as often and as freely as they would like.
Okay, so the defense got a big victory there.
Yes.
they had claimed that he was harassed and being,
And apparently when the judge made that ruling in court, Richard Allen smiled. He was embraced by his attorneys. So it definitely was something that he's wanted.
Yeah, boy, oh boy. And I know we want the cameras in there. Barbara, last question quickly, please. Do you know if the families of Abby and Libby want this to be televised?
I don't know how they feel about that at the moment. They are under a gag order. They're not talking about the case. I know that they also are looking forward to the trial to see all of the information. Many of them are very convinced that the right person is behind bars at the moment, but they still want to see how that plays out in court and listen to the testimony, as difficult as that's going to be for them.
And at this point, we don't know for sure, but all signs point to this judge saying no cameras, huh?
She seems pretty adamant that she is not going to change her mind on that, and she also makes it difficult for the reporters who are covering this because you can't even bring a phone in or a laptop to be able to be sharing notes with your newsroom or live tweeting what's going on. So it's all literally taking notes with pen and paper and then coming out and making sense of that at the end of the day.
Really, you know, and Barbara, I know I'm preaching to the choir on this one. If there was ever a case where we needed transparency more than ever, it is the Delphi case. So I hope
a lot of people, I think, if they don't see it themselves, are going to have a hard time believing the verdict, whichever way it goes. And there'll always be questions.
Definitely. Barbara McDonald, we love asking you questions. You've always got the answers for us. Thank you for all of this. We'll see you soon.